This boy was stuck at level 1. Because of that, he was humiliated every single day, even by his younger brother, the most powerful mage. His name was Kurosaki Rei, the older brother with no talent whatsoever. Still, he never gave up on becoming a mage. Until one day, in the Void Dungeon, everyone was defeated, and in the end, only he remained. As the final boss toyed with him, spilling his blood, a system appeared. He obtained the seal of a dark ability, time reversal, and so he began turning back the entire world until he reached a full regression into the past, to when he was still young. But now, with the most broken ability in the world, sunlight streams through the window, illuminating the interior of a luxurious room. On a lavish table, food is ready for a special celebration. Servants celebrate Isaac's recommendation to the Royal Academy, impressed by his age. Congratulating the young master, his nanny says she has prepared all his favorite foods. Thanking the nanny, 10-year-old Isaac von Gotha smiles, satisfied. Then, another man offers a gift, even though Isaac told them not to worry about it. The man explains that his son recovered thanks to young Isaac's help. Accepting the gift, Isaac thanks him, as a younger boy calls out to him cheerfully. With a lute in his hands, the boy announces he will play a song to celebrate. The man then comments that Jonas is very skilled with the musical instrument. Pleased, Isaac asks him to play, and the boy eagerly agrees. The young musician closes his eyes and begins to strum the lute's strings. Suddenly, the scene darkens, highlighting the instrument as voices call out Jonas's name. Waking with a start, Isaac screams in his room, looking terrified. Sitting up in bed, he tries to catch his breath, realizing it was just a dream. Looking to the side, Isaac reflects, commenting that it was all just foolishness. Thinking of the snowy landscape, he laments that he can't go back to those past days. Firm footsteps echo as he walks down the stairs, marking his exit. Approaching, he reaches out to open a wooden door. Entering the room, a man announces it's morning, wishing him a good day. Turning his head, Isaac looks surprised, questioning what is happening. Seeing Isaac's pale face, Lucas asks if he had a nightmare. Isaac explains he dreamt of the past from about 20 years ago. Offering fresh cheese, Lucas advises him not to dwell on old memories. Then Lucas announces they will have the fencing practice he missed yesterday. Focusing, Isaac recalls that time, 20 years before this moment. When he was 10, just about to enter the Royal Academy, a bad flu hit him. The scene shifts to the mansion, where his father speaks with a scholar from the magic tower. As everyone knows, every being is born with their own vessel for mana. However, his mana circulates abnormally, being fast and very volatile. At a certain point, his vessel shatters completely, and a long-ignored truth becomes real. The mana inside his body bursts like a dam, colliding with the external mana. This collision causes a massive mana explosion, making him cry out in despair. The energy then spreads through the room, breaking objects and hitting people. Many are injured, and the mana seems to subside, only to explode again. Finally, it tears through his younger brother's right hand, leaving him devastated. With a terrified look, his father tends to him as he begs to be locked away. He wants a place where no one can visit, so he won't hurt anyone else. Then, he finds himself alone, in a dark room, sitting at a table. As he eats, he thinks to himself, wondering if he was 15 at the time. Suddenly, Isaac coughs, drawing attention to his condition. Worried, he calls out to Lucas, who is standing with his back to him. Looking at his hand, Lucas sees it's bleeding, a consequence of the mana. Isaac explains that it's a symptom of mana poisoning from being near him. He warns Lucas that this happens from being close, and that he needs a month of rest. Laughing, Lucas asks who will take care of him if he's not around. Unconcerned, he asks if Isaac knows who he is. Lucas reminds him that he's caused dozens of explosions and hasn't lost a single hair, but Isaac says he won't find anyone as good as Lucas. Telling him to leave, Isaac says he is going to meditate and wants no interruptions. Wishing him good luck, Lucas smiles and says goodbye, adding it was a pleasure. The door closes, plunging the room into darkness, with Isaac all alone. Then he sees himself again, being congratulated for something. The scene changes, and Isaac is in a room, sitting in an elegant chair. He finds himself in a horror scene, with blood and strange figures around. Observing the surroundings, he comments that they have finally arrived. Looking up, he greets Lucas, who has returned. Lucas appears on the table while Isaac watches him, seated. His face stained with blood, Lucas smiles, saying it's been a while. Terrified, Isaac screams, not understanding what is happening. With wide eyes, he understands that Lucas has died. After he vomited blood, he never saw him again, only learning of his death from his father. Another mana explosion occurred that day, and he locked the door completely. Now, bread is his only company in the room, where the days drag on slowly. He thinks, lamenting that he didn't push everyone away, avoiding any attachment. Reflecting, he thinks he should have treated everyone more coldly. If he had acted differently, maybe they would still be smiling, free from suffering. A few years pass like this, and more loaves of bread pile up, marking his lonely time. Still alive, he grabs a piece of bread, knowing he must go on. Eating the bread, he decides he needs to look to the future and leave the past behind. Despite aging quickly, he marks the walls, showing the passage of years. For 30 years, he dedicated himself to magic, learning everything, with no more texts to study. Now, only intuition and inspiration remain to guide his deeper studies. He who begins this journey is ready to face whatever comes. In a solitary world of mana, he must awaken to his true essence. A few years passed, and he finally finds a clue to overcome his condition. Wondering if his family had any problems, he picks up a piece of bread to eat. Receiving research materials, he notices they keep arriving without end. With blue eyes, he reflects on time as wrinkles mark his age. Then, he thinks about his age, realizing he is now 71. Looking at the marks on the wall, footsteps sound at the door, and he hears a voice from outside. Calling to him, the visitor addresses him as brother. It's Jonas, asking if he's asleep, his voice coming from outside the door. Startled, he asks what Jonas is doing there, what brought him to this place. Jonas then asks if he can come in, waiting for an answer. With a clenched fist, Isaac tells him to speak from where he is, without entering. Sitting back to back, Jonas asks how he has been. Jonas then asks if Isaac knew that today is the anniversary of their father's death. Curious, Isaac asks how their father died, wanting to know the details. Warning that it's a long story, Jonas asks if he wants to hear it. If he doesn't mind, Isaac agrees, wanting to know what happened. Jonas begins to tell the story, going back 30 years. First, there was the War of Succession between the first two princes. Muttering something, he says the world seems to be a fun place. He listens intently, absorbing every word Jonas says. With a focused gaze, he reflects on what he is hearing. Remembering the past, young Isaac is sitting, his head bowed. Isaac admits that Jonas has a talent for storytelling, with a good narrative. Jonas agrees, saying that if he had known, he would have been a traveling poet. Thinking of the difficulty, he laments his limitation of being able to use only one hand. Jonas, lowering his head, apologizes to Isaac for what happened. Their hands join in a comforting gesture, showing their bond. Telling the truth, Jonas reveals that the family resented him, but also missed him dearly. Despite the resentment, their love for Isaac was immense, according to Jonas. His voice choked with emotion, Jonas affirms that they loved him deeply. Jonas regrets not seeing Isaac one last time, expressing how much he was missed. Questioning the last time, Isaac hears Jonas speak of a door that opened. While the war raged, never-before-seen monsters appeared, causing terrible atrocities. Reflecting, Isaac thinks that if he had arrived sooner, things might have been different. Walking to the door, blood trails mark the floor as he reflects. Opening the door, he is startled to see the floor stained with blood. There, his father lies dead on the floor, a sword stuck in his chest. Jonas comments it's a miracle their father managed to speak for so long, despite his wounds. Picking up his father, Isaac supports him, saying they can't stay there forever. With firm steps, he begins to leave the dark, painful room. Carrying his father on his back, he slowly climbs the stairs, leaving the place behind. Feeling how light his father is, Isaac asks why he was so thin, if he had been starving. Opening a large door, sunlight hits him, heralding a new path. His father looks lifeless, his face pale and tired, marking his farewell. Inside the destroyed hall, the bodies of monsters and guards are scattered on the floor. With his father dead, he stands outside the mansion as snow begins to fall. Holding out his hand, he feels the snowflakes, telling Jonas that it's snowing. With the ground frozen, he decides to wait for spring to bury their father in the family crypt. After everything, he too will be able to rest in peace. Dry branches of a tree stretch against a clear blue sky. On one of the branches, a small green leaf sprouts next to a white butterfly. A white butterfly lands on top of a wooden stake, glowing in the light. In the green field, an aged Isaac approaches a freshly dug grave. Holding a blue crystal in his hand, he observes the sight with a serious expression. With his palm open, he extends his arm in a gesture of offering. Then, Isaac manifests a ball of fire in his hand, showing his mastery. Looking at the sky, he tells Jonas that he has finally achieved his goal. He squeezes the blue crystal in his hand, pleased to have overcome his peculiar constitution. Finally, the old Isaac falls to the ground, either unconscious or dead. With his body on the ground, he asks if he can be forgiven for his actions. A portal of ruins, with a sword stuck in it, shows a desolate and sad place. A city in ruins, the scenery completely destroyed, laments the past. Lying on the green grass, Isaac rests peacefully, looking at the sky. A golden glow surrounds him, indicating the end of his long journey. A voice asks the young master if he had a nightmare, echoing in the room. Then, Isaac wonders if it's Hans, but quickly remembers he died long ago. Waking from a nightmare, Isaac opens his eyes, bothered by the sunlight. Getting up, he sees the sun, sweaty and pale, looking scared by the dream. Beside him, a man asks if he didn't sleep well, noticing his condition. Isaac asks if this is a dream, or if his life is flashing before his eyes. With hurried steps, the man approaches, calling for the young master. Isaac, at the window, tells Jonas to get down from the tree, warning him of the danger. Startled, the young master scolds him, saying he's fine. Jonas, with a smile on his face, holds a bottle of wine in his hand. Shouting, Jonas calls for Isaac, waving from the top of the tree. With wide eyes, Isaac says Jonas's name, watching him from the window. Jonas celebrates cheerfully from the top of the tree, while Isaac watches, distressed. Then, he leans out the window thinking that this is not a dream. Isaac then realizes he has returned to the past, ready for a new journey. In a solitary world, where only Mana and he exist, he must awaken to his true essence. Letting go of past thoughts and perspectives, he breaks free from his chains. Finally, he becomes his true essence, finding his purpose. With a determined look, Isaac is ready for whatever comes in his new life. In the room, maids clean up the mess made by the young master, who's had another outburst. Entering through the door, a servant reflects that the young master's personality has grown sensitive due to his illness. Overhearing the complaints, Hans becomes irritated and decides to teach them all a lesson. Stopping Hans, a hand grabs his arm, warning him that he's done enough. Turning to Hans, the young master states that the people weren't wrong in what they said. Asking Hans to step back, the young master warns him that he got hurt again just by being nearby. With a serious look, Hans takes in the young master's words, thinking about the situation. Kneeling, Hans confronts the young man, stating that his master is mistaken. Reaffirming his support, Hans tells the young master that he's on his side and that he's just going through a tough time. Hans assures the young man that after all this passes, this bad phase will be forgotten. With a smile on his face, Hans talks about life, unaware of his tragic end in an explosion. In the castle, a body lies on the floor, showing the consequences for those who cared. Reflecting on the loss, he realizes he was the cause of all those deaths. In a flashback, a happy boy is seen playing, contrasting with the current reality. Looking at the landscape, the young master decides what he must do, and looks at Hans. In acknowledgement, Hans smiles at the young master, paying attention. Turning his back, Hans obeys and walks away from the young master. Angrily, the young master yells at Hans to get out of his sight right now. The young master reflects that giving that order was the right decision. Clenching his fist, he thinks that being near him puts others in danger. Walking away, Hans's footsteps signal his departure from the room. On another day, Hans asks the young master not to carry everything on his own. Expressing his trust, Hans says that sometimes it's good to believe in people. Questioning himself, he can't remember the words, as if it were all a dream. Touching his face, he feels a pang of pain, remembering what happened. Feeling the pain, he wonders if that reality was even real. Remembering the death, he kneels in the forest, reflecting on the past. Visualizing the happy past, he thinks that reality doesn't matter so much now. Resolute, the young master declares that the mana explosions cannot happen anymore. A long time ago, someone like him suffered. A man named Zeke von Gotha, a mage who reached the 10th class, his great-grandfather. When he was living with nothing, he found records of the past, left by his father. After carefully examining everything, he discovered a way to overcome this constitution. Showing the rune, he points out that it was the solution to the problem. Through research, a unique pattern was created, which becomes a runestone. Thinking of the past, his hands would tremble, but now, as a young man, it was simple. To prevent a mana explosion, the vessel containing it must withstand constant circulation. However, his mana circulates too quickly, and the vessel can't handle it. A normal person would die instantly upon rupture, but his vessel restores itself. As if nothing had happened, everything returned to normal. That's why he could explode 10 or 20 times without major consequences. With the runestone in hand, he plans to intentionally damage his mana pathway. By applying continuous impact to the damaged area, the process would begin. This way, a new passage would open, dispersing the force of the violent mana. However, the success rate was low and he only managed it right before he died. A small flame was proof that he had succeeded. With an apprehensive look, he wonders if it will work this time. A flame appears in his hand, confirming the method's success. The flame intensifies, startling the young man. With wide eyes, he is surprised by what he sees. Shocked, he wonders what kind of fire this is, feeling its energy. Then, the mana reorganizes, forming a new flow of energy. The young man feels the mana spreading through his body, noticing the change. With a calmer expression, he observes the result of what he just did. Holding the rune, the young man continues to feel the mana's power. The flame in his hand grows stronger, showing the method's effectiveness. He thinks that the mana passages have increased to 3, just as he imagined. Having 3 passages, he can cast 3 spells at the same time. Surprised, he realizes the plan worked, but it wasn't his final goal. Pondering, he remembers his true objective is to stop the explosions. For that, 3 passages aren't enough. He needs more. He needed to use more magic and increase the passages, reducing the load on the vessel. Until then, he would continue his work, thinking about the future. Holding the rune, he affirms that he can't keep anyone close. Leaving the castle behind under the moonlight, he notices no one is around. At another time, Hans announces with a smile that dinner is ready. Hans says it's wheat bread, the young master's favorite, but he's told to leave. Trying to feed him, Hans insists the young man eat at least 1 piece. Hans insists further, saying he will stay there until he sees him eat. Near the fireplace, the young master asks Hans his age. He answers that he's 12. At that age, it was common to act spoiled, Hans thinks. Taking the bread, he asks if the cook made it, since it's been a while since he last had some. Hans smiles, pleased to see the young master eating the bread. The young master asks about the cook, as he hasn't seen her that day. Hans replies that her son, Hunder, has pneumonia, so he asks if she has returned home. Thinking about the cook, Hans reflects that things were going well. As the fire crackles in the fireplace, Hans waits for the next question. The young master observes Hans thinking about the situation. Tiredly, he asks if only Hunder is suffering from pneumonia. Hans looks at the young master with a serious expression. Hans reveals that all the children in the village have caught the disease. The young master understands the situation, thinking about what he's heard. Under the moon, he recalls the pneumonia incident in Black Goose Village. Because of it, the cook lost her son and lived in sorrow until she died. As he fell to his death, the young master felt a sense of relief, stating that he would depart first. He didn't want the cook to go through that again. The young master then recalls that the cause of the pneumonia was clear. At the table, the young master calls for Hans, who turns to him. Leaning in, the young master asks Hans which monster was recently subjugated. On a calm night, the moon lights up the dark sky. A deer walks through the snowy forest, taking in the scenery. Startled, the deer turns its head, sensing something. As a blast of fire erupts, the deer leaps away. Fleeing the attack, the deer runs through the forest, quickly disappearing from sight. Looking at the fire, the young master regrets what he's done. Holding the flame, he thinks the animal looked like a wolf. Walking through the forest, he finds a sign pointing to Black Goose Village. Back at the castle, the young master asks Hans about the monster defeated in the village. Hans says he didn't see it up close, but the mage's tower bought the materials. Recalling, Hans adds that he managed to get a look at the creature. According to Hans, it looked like a giant spider with silver hair. Researching, the young master identifies the creature as a winter spider. Winter spiders aren't strong, but they form large groups because they reproduce so quickly. The greatest danger, he realizes, lies in the mana they emit. Prolonged exposure to this mana results in poisoning, a toxin that constricts the throat. In the forest, the young master finds medicinal herbs, glowing with a faint light. He thinks the village children were poisoned by the winter spider's mana. Placing the herbs in a bucket, he prepares to use them. At that time, knowledge about mana poisoning was almost non-existent, often mistaken for pneumonia. With this amount of herbs, he believes it will be enough to relieve the children's symptoms. Knowing this was a temporary solution, he walks through the forest, pressing on. For a complete cure, he thinks, the winter spider infestation had to be eliminated. He considers asking his parents for help, but they were busy. His father was at the border fortress, and his mother was traveling the continent, searching for a cure for him. If he waited for them, Hunder's life would be in danger. The scene shifts to the village, peaceful under the moonlight. In a simple house, the cook sits on the edge of the bed. Troubled thoughts weigh on her mind as she waits anxiously. Just then, there's a knock at the door. She turns to open it, asking who it is. Turning around, the cook is startled to see the young master. The young master says she looks tired, and the cook is surprised. She asks what brings him here and if something happened at the estate. Then, the cook notices he's covered in dirt. Looking at her, the young master remains silent for a moment. He explains that she hadn't shown up for work in days, so he came to check on her. The cook asks him not to come in, saying Hunder has pneumonia and he could catch it. He shows her the bag of herbs, and she gives him a questioning look. He says it should be enough. The cook takes the bag, surprised. She asks what's in the bag, and the young master replies that it's herbs. He explains she needs to grind them, make a paste, and then boil it for Hunder to drink. In the room, he observes Hunder, who is lying sick in bed. He notices several blue spots, a sign of mana poisoning. Calling out to Hunder, he asks if the boy can hear him. Young Hunder blinks his eyes, a sign that he heard. Scared, Hunder begs Isaac not to send his mother away. The cook feels a pang of guilt, knowing she missed work because of her son's illness. The young master says he wouldn't send the cook anywhere. Touching Hunder's head, he says his mother is the only one who gives him bread. Asking Hunder to just focus on getting better, the young master reassures him. Shifting to the forest, the young master and another man approach a cave, the place he's been looking for. The man confirms it's a limestone cave, dark inside. Thanking him, the young master takes the lantern, saying he'll go on from here. The man warns him to be careful, as people have disappeared around here. The young master thanks him for the warning. The young master thinks that winter spiders like limestone caves. He figures this is the only limestone cave nearby, so it must be their habitat. Before going in, he decides to make some preparations. By creating a new mana circulatory system, he can cast 3 spells at once. At the same time, he can produce a force similar to a class 2 spell, but there's a limit, he thinks. If he overuses it, the vessel might break. Not knowing how many winter spiders are inside, he can't use magic recklessly. So, he thinks, he needed that plant. He finds a frosty belladonna, a plant with blue berries. Normally, its berries are diluted for paralysis or anesthesia, but for the spiders, it was a deadly poison. It's ironic they live in the same place as their mortal poison, he thinks, gathering the berries. As the sun shines, he continues to collect the berries in the forest. Sighing, he thinks he should have brought gloves, as the plant is quite potent. He believes the preparation is sufficient, and that he already made the runes back at the castle. Shall we go then? He asks himself, preparing for the cave. Entering the cave, he walks cautiously, holding the lantern. His footsteps echo as he moves deeper into the darkness. He looks into the depths, thinking that if he died here, it would be a pointless death. Realizing the path leads down, he thinks he needs a way to descend. He spots a rustic ladder, made of wood and rope. With a determined expression, he prepares to go down. Grabbing the ladder, he begins to descend into the dark cave. Reaching the bottom, he sighs, relieved to be down. With a serious look, he realizes he's found the right place. At the bottom of the cave, several mummified remains are scattered across the floor. They look like they'd had all their vital fluids drained, he thinks. Noticing a human bone, he wonders if it belongs to one of the missing people. Suddenly, something skitters above him, startling him. With a flash of light in his hand, he crouches, preparing for combat. Looking at the light, he concentrates his mana for an attack. Unleashing 2 blasts of fire, he illuminates the cave, revealing the creatures. The spiders retreat from the fire, and he thinks that this will keep them at bay for a while. He decides to prepare before they attack him as a group. Then, he adjusts his mask, ready for the fight ahead. He places the frosty belladonna in a pot, preparing the poison. Crouching, the young master prepares the herbs and the poison. With a focused gaze, he points to the pot with the herbs. Using a blast of fire, he ignites the herbs to start the process. Green smoke spreads through the cave, reaching the spiders. The spiders feel the effect of the poison, slowly backing away. The hunt begins, and the young master gets ready to fight. He looks ahead, determined to face the spiders. Seated in a spacious room, he looked focused, surrounded by many books on the table. Writing with a quill, he heard someone question what he was doing to let the situation get so bad. Turning, he watched the street from the window, wondering what was happening outside. Outside, a group was arguing, warning about the presence of His Excellency, but the voices grew louder. Then, one of the men questioned the lord of that territory, speaking of his failure to protect the people. Shouting up at the window, a man asked why Black Goose Village was abandoned, demanding silence. Turning his back to the window, he muttered that the noise was too loud, greatly bothering him. Sitting down again, he considered simply boarding up the windows to end the shouting. Then again, he wondered if it would be better to move somewhere completely underground. He figured there would be less noise and fewer people down there, ideal for researching peculiar constitutions. Considering the walls, he thought about using dimicitrium, a mineral with high magical durability, to contain explosions. Turning, he asked his companion Hans what he thought of the whole idea, expecting an answer. However, looking at the empty room, he realized Hans was no longer there, leaving him thoughtful. Reflecting on the situation, he paused and wondered where Hans could be. Then he recalled that Hans wasn't there at the moment, remembering something important. He then found himself sitting alone again, writing in the large room. Continuing to write with the quill, he seemed very focused on his studies now, his gaze fixed. He looked pensive, still lost in his own thoughts. Once more he wrote, the sound of the quill gliding smoothly on the paper, a moment of concentration. With his hand on the paper and his gaze focused, he seemed completely engrossed, writing non-stop. The room grows dark, and he remains seated, with many books and papers on the table. The scene changes. He's in an icy cave, with vapor rising from the ground and the ice. Sitting on the ground near a campfire, he watches the flames, a shovel and backpack beside him. He remarks that these old memories always came back to him, over and over again. He remembered that the winter spiders were his target, noting that the frozen belladonna worked well. Commenting on the poison, he explained he couldn't apply it directly to the spiders, but had to burn it to release smoke. Placing a damp cloth over his face, he blocked the air, as he wasn't immune to the poison and needed to protect himself. Using his mana, he purified the toxins in his body, a quick and effective process. Creating a fireball, he condensed it and launched it at a spider, hitting the target. Preparing the perimeter, he conjured more fire magic, shaping the flames for his plan. He cast 3 spells simultaneously, using 3 mana circuits, a technique he called multicasting. Pointing his finger, he bid farewell to the spiders, his plan already in motion, ending the battle. With a great blast of fire, he struck the area, causing a huge explosion and spreading flames everywhere. Walking through the fire, he advanced unfazed as the flames weakened the creatures. Surveying the area, he seemed very calm, confident that everything would go according to plan. Then, he noticed that the spiders were all heading to the same spot, which was strange. Thinking it over, he quickly realized there must be water there, watching their movement. Walking across the burning ground, he strode firmly, advancing through the spiders' territory. Then, he saw the creatures falling and disintegrating amidst the fiercely burning flames. He thought to himself that the fire was good, but he would suffocate from the smoke, and it was getting hot. He needed to finish quickly, hurrying to end it before the smoke could harm him. The scene shifts to a dark, icy place, with sharp, dark stalactites hanging from the ceiling. Walking through the cave with his light ahead, he followed a frozen river covered in ice. In an icy cavern, he remarked that it was surprisingly cold. Thinking he had thrown his coat away, he stepped on the frozen water, thinking the temperature had dropped enough to freeze puddles solid. It was very cold. Stopping suddenly, he looked around. There was something very strange about this cave. Looking up, he wondered if those were all eggs, seeing an infinite number of them. Near the eggs, he questioned if she had laid so many. A very worrying thought. A loud sound echoed, startling him, and he spun around, surprised by what it could be. Walking carefully, he heard strange noises, sensing something's presence. Turning his head, he peered into the dark cave. Something was approaching, making an odd noise. With a lantern in hand, he lit the way, and the echo of footsteps revealed something was there. Creating a fireball in his hand, he prepared for whatever was coming, ready to attack. He launched the fireball, hurling it forward, illuminating the dark cave with its flame. The fireball slammed against something on the wall, and the flames spread, revealing a creature. Standing on the ice, he looked to the side, watching something slowly approach. Danger. Startled, he saw a large creature, a monster revealing itself as it came toward him. Still frozen in place, he watched the creature approach, his blue eyes showing immense fear. Quickly, the creature attacked, and he threw himself to the side, dodging a direct hit. Falling to the ground, he felt the impact of the attack, letting out a grunt of pain. Things just got serious. Getting up angrily, he remarked that this feeling never went away, still frustrated. Then, he recognized the creature. It was the Winter Spider Queen, the most dangerous of them all. Unlike the others, she resisted fire and emitted an intense cold, the very one who gave the species its name. The creature attacked with a swipe, nearly hitting him as he narrowly dodged, retreating quickly. Jumping aside, he dodged the attack, avoiding the Winter Spider Queen's blow. He counterattacked with a fireball, hitting her dead on, trying to burn the creature, but it was no use. He realized that being hit by a fireball didn't make her burn like the others. This was a problem. Still thinking, he noted that at least she wasn't very agile, which gave him a slight advantage. Feeling sick, he let out a grunt. His body was starting to reach its limits. His body was at its limit, which was natural for a 12-year-old boy who had been casting magic all night. The Spider Queen advanced, and he had to move fast to avoid being crushed by the creature's powerful strike. Pausing to breathe, he collected himself, his mind clear after the shock and adrenaline of the battle. Thinking back, he recalled the wheat bread Hans had given him. It was truly delicious, he remembered. In this northern land where wheat didn't even grow, eating soft wheat bread was all thanks to the nurse. On the ground, he felt the impact of a powerful blow coming down hard from above. Getting up angrily, he thought that this feeling never went away, annoying him greatly. Facing the monster, he recognized the Winter Spider Queen, a gigantic creature before him. Resistant to fire, she radiated an intense cold, the very one who gave the species its name. With a precise strike, the creature attacked, and he threw himself back, barely escaping. Jumping aside, he dodged the blow and the fire burned around him. Hitting the monster, he launched a fireball, which exploded on impact. Reflecting on the hit, he noted that the fireball didn't make her burn like the others. A problem. Observing the creature, he realized she at least wasn't very agile, which helped. Letting out a grunt, he felt the pain. His body was already at its absolute limit. Feeling exhausted, he knew his body was reaching its limit. As he had been fighting all night, the Spider Queen attacked again, and he dodged, avoiding another deadly blow. Taking a deep breath, he composed himself, ready to continue the fight, despite his fatigue. The scene changes. He remembers the wheat bread Hans had given him. It was really tasty. In this northern land where wheat didn't grow, eating soft bread was thanks to his nurse. The creature let out a shriek, attacking with its claws, the sound echoing through the cave. Bracing for impact, he knew he had to endure, preparing for the next attack. Thinking about his limitations, he realized he couldn't fail. He didn't have enough mana for another fireball, not one that would do any damage. So he decided to abandon long-range attacks, preparing something different, a new plan. Generating a new fireball, he remarked that this one was different from the others, more powerful. Focusing his energy, he condensed the magic's power, preparing an even stronger attack. Holding the spell, he condensed it a bit more, feeling the power in his hands. It was almost ready. Screaming for the creature to die, he launched the spell with all his might, aiming to hit. Hit! The Spider Queen thrashed, its body contorting in pain. The attack was powerful. He watched the creature, seeing the impact of his attack, and the glow in his eyes intensified. The creature shrieked in pain as he watched, and blue magic spread across its body. The monstrous creature appears, emitting an intense and powerful blue energy. With swift strikes, it advances, showing its full strength in the confrontation. Feeling trapped, he tries to pull his arm away, but the power keeps him from moving. The blue energy envelops his hand, holding him completely still. His resistance gone, he falls unconscious, completely losing control of his body. Then, plummeting from above, he sees the monster still dominating the terrifying place. On the ground, he lies fallen as the creature endlessly shows off its power. Near him, a crystal shines brightly, revealing itself as the source of the energy. Flying freely, the crystal displays immense power, with blue energy spreading all around. Waking up confused, he wonders where he ended up. Arriving at the scene, he hears the nanny's voice, asking about the young master. Then, Hans asks if he really didn't know, since the master went to the abandoned mine. The nanny then says she didn't know, because the village hunter guided him on a hunt. Going back in time, he recalls defeating the Spider Queen, then passing out after hitting his head. Upon returning to the village, he finds Hans waiting impatiently at the entrance. Hans supports him and says he fell asleep right there, exhausted. In bed, he was already healed, as they had done exactly as he instructed. Seeing the young master, Hans thinks about the kind heart he shows. Lying there, he hears everything, a little embarrassed by the situation. Calling out to Hans, he surprises him, asking if he was already awake. About how long he slept, Hans replies that he was out for half a day. The nanny then angrily questions what he meant by fending for himself. Explaining the distraction, he says he was gathering herbs and fell. With Hinder already better, he lies about the fall so as not to worry them. Relieved, he decides to keep the mana poisoning a secret. Changing scenes, two men in the mine see the dead spiders on the ground. The nanny, curious, asks how he knew about the herbs, and he says he read about it. Hans asks if they are going, but he points out that it's snowing outside. He reminds Hans that leaving the mansion empty wouldn't be good for them. Handing over a basket, the nanny offers apples for Hans to take with him. Offering the apples, Hans says the villagers sent them to thank him. Taking one of the apples, he seems to be deep in thought. He suggests the nanny take another week off, thinking of Hinder's recovery. Worried, the nanny asks if that would be acceptable, fearing the head butler. The uncertainty about the time off lingers, leaving Hans and the nanny quite confused. Then, he instructs the nanny to make jam with all those apples. Wanting apple jam, he asks for wheat bread for when the nanny returns. Smiling, the nanny feels relieved by the unexpected kindness. As a suggestion, he asks what they think about an apple pie as well. With night falling, the idea of a pie seems like a great call. A week passes, and the sun shines brightly in the clear sky. A young man crosses the courtyard of the large building on a peaceful day. Moving his arm, he feels something strange manifesting. Running in a hurry, he realizes that a week has passed. Noticing a change, he sees his body has also transformed. His mana circuits have increased, now totaling 4. His body has stabilized, and he can now use 4 spells simultaneously. As he runs, he realizes the struggle against the spiders strengthened him greatly. Using magic, he realizes the need for understanding and intuition. The task consumes a lot of mental energy, and if the body fails, the mind follows. Mental energy restores physical stamina, aiding in the body's recovery. He reached his limit so quickly in the mine because his body was untrained. In another life, Lucas used to train his stamina arduously. Lucas had a gentle smile, always overseeing the training. Clenching his fist, he feels the change happening in his body. The butler arrives, calling the young master for something important. 2 men appear, and one of them announces the regular checkup. He spots the head butler, Schiller, who has come to supervise. The man with glasses greets the young master, asking how he feels. Seated in the courtyard, the doctor appointed by his father begins the examination. Despite being a famous doctor, he didn't understand the young master's constitution. The doctor says he sees no major issues as he seems very healthy. Thinking to himself, he notes that the doctor was already drawing his own conclusions. Opening his case, The doctor reveals a potion called Panacea. The Panacea potion stabilizes mana flow, making it very useful. Holding the potion, he thinks about how his father always provided the best for him. Commonly, Panacea means cure-all and has various uses. Some use it as an energy stimulant, others as a stamina booster. There's a translation error, as its true effect is to stimulate mana flow. For him, with his uncontrolled mana, it was a poison in disguise. However, it was now a perfect catalyst, helping to increase his mana circuits. The doctor takes his leave, saying they'll see each other next month. Satisfied. As he leaves, the doctor walks through the courtyard, leaving the young master alone. Standing still, the young master asks what Schiller has to say to him. Schiller comments that the young master was well behaved today. Perplexed, he remembers that he used to always get irritated and refuse the doctor. At that, he asks if he should have gotten irritated, considering the situation. Schiller remains silent, just observing him with curiosity. Schiller heard that he cured the village children's pneumonia. Startled, he asks if Schiller knew, and Schiller says that Hans told him. Thinking to himself, he realizes that Schiller must have interrogated Hans to find out. Schiller warns that if the council finds out, things could get much worse. He warns that he'll let it slide this time, but that he should control himself. Schiller approaches, telling him to restrain himself from now on. Thinking about the past, he realizes he could never get close to Schiller. The head butler was a rigid and cold man, keeping his distance from everyone. However, if he couldn't restrain himself, he should at least talk about it. Schiller hands him the case, instructing him to talk with him if he can't control himself. Remembering Jonas, he knew that Schiller was loyal to the family. Schiller, who served the Gotha family, kept his position until the old master's death. Surprisingly, Schiller was being considerate and kind. Thanking Schiller, he smiles, understanding the message. Schiller observes him and asks if there's a reason he runs every day. He explains that every mage who reaches the second circle trains their body without exception, so he concludes that a body capable of mastering mana needs proper training. Schiller seems to understand, a thoughtful expression on his face. Schiller writes something on a scroll with perfect calligraphy. The eldest young master cured the pneumonia of the children in the village. Seated at the desk, the verification process was successfully completed. Due to the young master's constitution, it will be difficult for him to use magic in the future. Cautiously, he considers the young master's path as a scholar to be a bright one. With this news, His Excellency will also be able to breathe a sigh of relief. Then someone knocks on the door and he tells the person to enter. Rosa enters, excusing herself to the head butler. Schiller, the head butler, asks if it's Rosa at the door again. But Rosa insists, saying that the maids were disappearing and not coming back. Besides Clara, Annette, who hasn't taken a day off in 3 years, has also vanished. Rosa says she's sure that something has happened to Annette. Annette is tied up and trapped, clearly in trouble. Putting it all together, he questions if the situation isn't quite strange. 3 maids have vanished in 2 months. He wonders if that's common in such a harsh place. With hostile weather, bandits, and monsters showing up, he asks if she'll run away too. Annette wouldn't just disappear without a word. After all, she worked so hard for her father's medicine. Then he suggests she got tired of taking care of her elderly father. The maids warn him to watch his tongue, demanding some respect. Jokingly, he says he has a theory and asks them to listen closely. Pointing, he declares the reason is something unexpected. He reveals that the cause of it all is black magic. With the castle in the background, he wonders if the black magic comes from the family of mages. The first master is also unwell, making him think the Lord might use magic for everything. The maids are shocked, asking what he's implying about the girls. He asks what they'll do if they don't accept it, since he might be right. The maid in red defends him, saying the Lord isn't like that. As he walks away, he remarks that it's an interesting story. The man is startled, turning to face the new character on the scene. With a smile, the young man invites him to explain this story in more detail. Starting his tale, the man explains that it all began 2 months ago. First, the maid Hilda disappeared without a trace. Then, weeks later, another employee vanished. And over the weekend, the third one never came back. In the grand hall, the man continues his story, watching the young man. Curious, the boy asks if he has any idea why they disappeared. Ignoring the look, he says he's not sure of the answer. Promising he can be honest, the young man assures him he won't be punished. Surprised, he asks if that's true, and the boy confirms it is. In silence, he thinks about the situation, looking at the young man. At that moment, the boy asks if all of this is happening because of him. Coughing, he says it's kind of obvious, almost a certainty. Thinking of Hans, he remembers that the servant is always injured. Hans always says he won't die a peaceful death. The man regrets saying that, realizing his mistake. With a serious voice, the boy calls his name, and the man begs for mercy. Unmarried and with no children, he says he doesn't want to die. Then, the young man asks the man to do something for him. The man gets scared, clasping his hands in apprehension. In the room, a blue flame appears in the air, vibrating. In the room, The young man sits on the bed and says the names Rosa and Annette. The image shows the two maids amidst the same blue flame. Then, the young man makes a gesture with his hand, as if summoning something. Remembering, he confirms those were their names. With a deep gaze, the young man watches the flames, lost in thought. They were the only two who offered to serve after Hans and the nanny died. The floor shows the remains of a broken potion jar, with a liquid spilling out. Dripping onto the floor, more blood mixes with the purple liquid. Asking them to leave him, he wants to be alone, but the maid is worried about his hands. Annoyed, he yells at them to get out, startling them both. Finally, he warns them never to bring that useless potion again. The maid encourages him, asking him not to lose hope. At this, the young man asks what this so-called hope is. Questioning what she knows, he asks if she even understands the feeling. He clenches his bloody fist, the pain clear on his face. The maids are startled, and one of them calls out to the young master. She explains that she killed a friend with her own hands. The young master asks, surprised, if she killed a friend. Rosa says it was Enette who was with her back then. She regrets that if she had just reached out to Clara, she might have saved her. The young master stomps his foot on the ground, annoyed with the situation. The maid explains that she knows his situation is special, but everyone does things they don't want to do. The young master remains silent, processing her words. It happens at least once to everyone in their lifetime. Annette's dark confession ended up comforting him in a strange way. He reflects that he should have asked more questions back then. Pounding his fist, the young master shows a look of determination. Calling at the door, Bill announces he has news for him. The young master asks about the maid's whereabouts. Then Bill replies that it didn't take long to find out. He says he asked the beggars at the crossroads and the descriptions matched. The young master then asks what the answer is, wanting to know the truth. Bill reveals that their disappearance is the work of slave traffickers. They promise a better life in the South and then sell people. Questioning, the young master asks why they would need someone to go south. Bill explains that he doesn't understand, as the situation is more complex. You need transportation, mercenaries for protection, and free citizen status there. Thinking that women alone couldn't manage that, he states that it's a difficult thing to do. The young master nods in understanding and says it makes sense. Bill then thinks that the boy still doesn't understand how the world works. Surprised, Bill becomes suspicious, noticing a change in the atmosphere. Changing the subject, Bill explains the problem to the young master. He says he spent a lot to make the beggars talk. Then, he reveals that he spent all the money the young master gave him. The young master asks, astonished, if he spent all 20 silver coins. Bill comments that people are more suspicious than you'd think. With a serious look, the young master observes Bill, thoughtful. He says the money doesn't matter, he just wants to find them soon, showing great generosity. After seeing the document, he asks if there's anything else, receiving an affirmative answer. He guarantees the split will be fair this time, asking if the other man accepts the job. Excited, he confirms he'll take the job, diving headfirst into the proposal. He thinks he just needs a silver tongue to earn big, but the situation is risky. He says that big gains require big risks, so he'll guide the other to the broker. Excited, he exclaims that life is all about high risk, high return. Switching to the dungeon, he finds himself trapped in a cage, disheartened by the situation. Observing the bones on the floor, he realizes the gravity of where he is. Shocked and screaming, he questions how things got to this point. Then, while he's trapped, the young man appears behind the bars. Holding a blue gem, the young man faces the other with a confident smile. We see a long dungeon hallway, water trickling along the floor and torches lighting the walls. He grips the bars tightly, wondering how he ended up here, furious with the situation. In a flashback, he remembers taking the young master from the mansion, thinking everything was fine. Back then, he easily found the broker who took the maids, a man who looked like an exiled noble, but something went terribly wrong, a twist he never expected. Looking at the young man, it's clear he's the center of all this chaos. Meanwhile, the other man thinks the young master was an obvious target for traffickers. Now, trapped, he wonders why the hell he ended up in this terrible place. Furious, he thinks about the irony of it all, especially the young master's fate. He realizes the young man is untouched, considered valuable merchandise, while he has lost everything. Shouting, he demands to know the plan, insisting they must have one for this situation. Annoyed, he tells the young man to stop playing with the stone and just talk. When the young man asks about formalities, he's met with the other's anger, who fears for his life. Warning that he's going after Annette and the maids, he gets a sarcastic reply from the young man. Staring at him, the young man questions if he has any way to escape those massive iron bars. Pointing forward, the young man looks on seriously, leaving the other thoughtful. Startled, the man in the cell reacts to the situation, surprised by what he saw. Looking at them both, we see the young man standing next to the man, who is in his underwear. Then he becomes even more frightened, a look of terror on his face. Stammering, he calls out to the young master, confused by the situation. With a forced smile, He asks if he's going to be left behind, and if the young man knows him. Hearing no, he tries to reverse the situation, begging the young man not to do it. The scene changes. Two men are talking, saying the place is a labyrinth, full of bandits. Back in the cell, he asks if the young man thinks he can't handle it, pleading not to be abandoned. Perplexed, the young man ignores him, but stops when he hears the other's desperate call. Bracing himself on the floor, he begs for help, saying he'll do anything. Awaiting a response, the young man remains silent, looking at the man. Staring at the man, the young man asks if he knows, "Bill, what's happening?" With a piercing gaze, he reveals that he's seen Bill act this way before. Begging for his life, that man asks his master to spare him in the snow. Regretfully, he says he was out of his mind, lamenting having betrayed his master. Recounting his past, the master recalls that Bill was a bandit, first and foremost. But the betrayal came, he says, and this time Bill betrayed House Gerda. With a tear-streaked face, Bill hears that they can no longer trust him. Breathing heavily, Bill pleads for a chance, but one of the men orders him to stop. He asks if he thought selling the family's secret books would be a light offense. After everything, the cloaked man just stands there, watching the traitor on the ground. Then the white-haired young man comments that he would have been useful if he weren't so greedy. Thinking about it, he remembers that Bill was a former bandit and knew the underground economy. Watching closely, he remembers something important, if his memory serves him right. And so the criminal organization Bill sought out is the same one that kidnapped the maids. These bandits would spread their power through trafficking, torturing people like a plague. He concludes that any threat to his family must be eliminated in advance. Holding a scroll, he asks if the man hadn't promised to do anything. He warns that Bill needs to do something first, looking apprehensively at the person. The ceiling of the place comes into view, with a lantern hanging from chains, providing little light. A group of men can be seen ahead, watching the scene in silence. Hearing the question about why the father isn't eating, a man eats at the table. The way he eats makes the others seem worried, as they urge him to eat. He grips his fork angrily, questioning if the person they're looking for is there. He tells them to wait a little longer, saying they will be reunited with dark magic. Getting no response, he sighs and shows frustration at the others' silence. Focusing his gaze on the skull, he questions if the soul's power has weakened. When he asks about his bathwater, he's told there's only mercenary left to sell. Stopping the movement, he grabs the other's hand forcefully. He lifts the man by the neck, holding him effortlessly. With great power, he maintains a serious gaze, his face stained with blood, without any hesitation. And then he asks if that one would be enough for his bathwater. As the man says he'll wait, the other one rushes to prepare everything. He walks down the hall, his footsteps echoing in the silence of the place. Arriving in the basement, he finds a body lying on the floor among the barrels. The man mutters about the damned dark magic, seeming exhausted by the situation. He wonders how many times this has happened, suggesting they offer the merchandise next time. He hears the other tell him to stop complaining and take care of the body. Turning his face, he looks frightened by what he sees. Meanwhile, one of them watches the dark corridor, sensing something strange. Startled, they both look ahead, a sound seeming to have caught their attention. At the end of the hall, he hears a strange sound, wondering what it could be. Worried, they watch the scene, seeing their colleague being choked. On the ground, he calls for Chief Nears, looking very apprehensive. Meanwhile, a body is dragged across the floor, leaving a visible trail. Terrified, the two watch the scene, unable to react. They fall to the ground, scared, as the other one crawls away. A large foot approaches, revealing the tormentor's presence as the other man groans. Holding the bloodied knife, he asks if he could get some water. Realizing who it is, the man is shocked as the other smiles with blood on his face. Walking through the scene, Bill appears, holding the dirty knife in his hand. Staring at the other man, he demands they give him the water, his face stained. Startled, Bill turns around, clutching the knife, as his name is called again. Gripping the knife, he wonders why he's acting this way, so confused. With a tense expression, he thinks it's all that boy's fault. The scene changes. The young man asks a shirtless Bill if he would do anything, showing him a piece of paper. Then Isaac explains that it's a contract, a smile on his face. Kneeling, Bill listens to the first two rules, unconditional obedience and absolute secrecy, about Isaac. With a frightened look, Bill wonders about the terms upon hearing the third condition, death for violation. Isaac demands a signature in blood for the magic to work, but Bill questions the insanity of the proposal. Just then, a sound startles Bill. "Who's there?" he asks, extremely tense. Isaac rushes Bill, asking if he doesn't want to live, as the other man trembles in fear. Feet shuffle, and then a hand gets ready to sign the scroll. He walks, feeling the terror as his footsteps echo on the floor. Grumbling, Isaac brandishes the knife, showing his impatience. Wounding his finger, Bill quickly makes a precise cut on his own hand. He places his bloody finger on the scroll, confirming the pact. As the contract is signed, A light envelopes Isaac and the girl, sealing the deal. Then Isaac smiles, showing his satisfaction with what just happened. Immediately after, two angry men appear, demanding to know how Isaac and the girl got out. "They're coming!" someone warns, and Isaac prepares to attack, throwing something into the air. Hit head-on, the two men fall unconscious from the blow, with no chance to react. On the ground, the boy is still there, watching Isaac with magic in his hands amidst the dust. Curious, the other one asks if they're dead. Isaac replies they only fainted. Watching the scene, Bill is impressed and asks how Isaac did that. Holding a crystal, Isaac displays his magic, surprising Bill with its power. The scene changes to a sewer with churning water in a very dark environment. They walk side by side, as Bill struggles to keep up with Isaac's pace. Bill praises Isaac, saying it's the first time he's ever seen ice magic, clearly impressed. With a crystal, Isaac explains that ice magic isn't practical, which Bill questions. Isaac then says it only seems that way, a mysterious look on his face. Bill then stops and listens carefully to Isaac's words. Bandits appear, and Bill watches the scene, pondering the situation. As they walk, Isaac asks Bill what it takes to make ice, leaving him confused. He asks him to guess, and Bill hesitantly replies, "Water." Isaac confirms, explaining you have to shape the water, whether it's in the air or in puddles. He shows the magic forming, going through compression, condensation, expansion, and evaporation. He admits managing it is easy, but executing it all at once is hard, as Bill warns they could be caught. Just then, Bill reacts with surprise, seeing what's coming towards him. Another man appears and asks who they are, while Isaac already prepares an attack. Pointing his finger, Isaac finishes the process, preparing the final blow. A giant frozen water droplet appears, floating in the air above the enemy's head. The man looks up, terrified, sensing the imminent danger. Isaac explains that it's phase change magic, showcasing his power. Because of that, it's not very useful in combat, Isaac says, as Bill watches the magic. He reflects that without it, he wouldn't even bother using such magic. Then, he reveals an ice mana stone he saved from the carcass of the Winter Spider Queen, even though it's not popular. Frozen mana stones have their own academic value, so they fetch a high price, and he got a really good one. As he uses his ice magic, he thinks about how its unpopularity makes it perfect, since few people know it. Difficult to distinguish from trauma, ice magic leaves no trace as it turns to water when it melts. He then reveals the magic is perfect for operating in the shadows, leaving no evidence behind. Another companion then looks frightened by the efficiency of that strange technique. Later in a hallway, the companion asks if he won't finish the job, but he replies that scoundrels are replaceable. Dodging a blow, he comments that he leaves them alive precisely so they'll do it again. Just then, a freezing blow hits the enemy, surprising the companion watching the fight. Thinking of his enemies, he says he'll kill, but only those who are truly important. Moving forward down the hallway, he continues on his path, determined, stating he will eliminate only one person. He looks at the enemy ahead with a serious expression. Then, they face the third enemy, who is waiting further down the path. Looking at them, the man ahead begins to speak, seemingly irritated by the situation. Recognizing the enemy, the companion shouts the man's name, shocked by his appearance. He's the leader of the bandits, a lunatic who tears people apart, the companion informs. Beginning to prepare an attack, he says that finding the enemy makes the job easier. A glowing sphere of energy floats in his hand, ready to be fired. Raising his finger, he projects a powerful blow towards the stationary opponent. Ice shards fly rapidly towards the enemy, who stands firm. Nearly hit, the leader narrowly dodges one of the freezing projectiles, but surprisingly, the enemy bats away the ice shard with his bare hands. Shocked, the companion reacts as the young man asks if this strength comes from the northern tribes. Slightly wounded, the leader asks his companion what they'll do, as the situation now seems serious. Looking at them, the leader addresses the pair, who seem a bit confused by his approach. Smiling, he says the young man is the merchandise, and that the situation is quite favorable. Realizing his intent, the leader warns that he'll be excellent material for his dark magic. As the leader advances, the companion begs not to be the target, pleading for forgiveness. The leader's hand extends, a dark aura around it, towards the frightened companion. Screaming desperately, the companion pleads, saying he's just a common, weak human, but a hand is just getting closer to his face. Terrified, the companion watches the danger rapidly approaching. Just then, an ice spike erupts from the leader's chest, taking him down instantly. Shocked, the companion realizes the ice he batted away earlier has now struck him. Extending his hand, the young man shows his resolve, aiming at the fallen enemy. Bleeding from the mouth, the leader lies on the ground, severely wounded. With the leader down, the young man calls out his companion's name, Bill. He tells his companion that from now on, he's the new leader, then looks at him. Then, the young man asks Bill if he knows what needs to be done. Worried, Bill clutches his knife, facing the terrible situation before him. Screaming, Bill runs from the scene, leaving the leader's body behind. In an instant, blood splatters, and the young man looks back, deep in thought. Closing his eyes, he thinks that everyone ends up doing things they never wanted to do. The scene changes to a room, where he's told this happens to everyone, at least once. However, they warn him that a mark will remain on his life, one that can't be erased. Then, holding his hand, they tell him there are only two options left. They say guilt can suffocate a person, leaving behind only a shell of what they were. At that moment, the maid holds the person's hand, hearing that she must fight to live for them too. Later, he appears, lost in thought with a distant look in his eyes. In that moment, he remembers Annette kneeling, realizing she had given him this advice before. Elsewhere, someone runs down a dark hallway, shouting Bill's name and demanding their daughter back. Meanwhile, a carriage moves forward, and we see other young women sitting on the floor. Then, a golden eye comes into focus, revealing that time has passed under the moon. Walking away from the carriage, she declares that Annette won't lose her friend in this lifetime. With a smile, the maid asks if they've heard that the nobles are looking for women from outside the region. Sitting at the table, they question why, since the southern women are said to be quite ugly. Excited, one of them considers going south too, saying she's done a lot of research on it. With a knowing look, she says she knows someone who can take them there for a small fee. Then she invites Annette and Hilda, asking if they'd like to go with them. Annette refuses the invitation, stating that she needs to stay and take care of her father. To him, she reveals it was the last time she saw Clara and Hilda, with no news of them afterward. Understanding the situation, the man asks if she was kidnapped while searching for them. In silence, the maid watches him, pondering his question. Later, she tells him she found Hilda and Clara again in the sewers, but they had lost their minds. He understands why. After all, she confesses she would have gone mad herself in a few more days. And so he says the sewer is a terrible place, where humans are sold or devoured. Telling the truth, she reveals she could have escaped from there at any moment. Still, she explains that the iron gate holding her was broken. From behind the bars, she stares straight ahead, her eyes empty. Sobbing, she can barely contain herself, her gaze filled with pain. In front of the bars, she finds her friend, who looked trapped and sad. Distressed, she remarks that maybe if she had stayed just a few more days. Reaching her hand toward the bars, she remembers leaving Clara behind. Gazing at the horizon, he seems to be reflecting on what he heard. Then, she finishes, saying she would have killed her friend, understanding the situation. He then thanks her for telling him, acknowledging how difficult the memory must be. With a hand on her chin, she reveals a doubt, and he asks what it is. Going back to the memory, she and Clara were happy to be taken back, but Hilda was different, saying she would die if she returned to the mansion. And she explains that Hilda seemed to fear death itself, not just the punishment. Reflecting, he says he understands, and that he will look into the situation. Turning to him, the maid awaits his next instruction. Soon, she tells him that Rosa suspects the bandits released them because of him. Crossing his arms, he comments that Rosa is a very perceptive maid. With a smile, she says it makes sense, because he's the only one who cares about maids. He watches her in silence, his gaze focused and attentive. Still looking at him, she realizes just how serious he looks. Then he calls her by her name, Annette, with a firm tone in his voice. He then thanks her, showing he is grateful for her help. But he changes his mind, saying they'll talk about it later. She accepts, asking for permission to leave. In the hallway, the sound of a creaking door echoes as someone passes by. Now in his office, he wields a sword, showing agility in his movements. He gives a slight smile, exuding confidence and mystery. And so, he thinks he's found an unexpected talent, considering teaching her magic. Later, at the castle, the day breaks, revealing a new scene. Walking down the street, a maid asks if they heard about the ones who returned. She explains they were going to be expelled, but Isaac welcomed them back. Questioning why he'd go to such lengths for them, she suspects he might be interested. A man opens a door and enters quickly. Placing something down, the man's hand moves carefully across the surface. Walking slowly, he carries heavy boxes down a dark old hallway. Arriving at the location, a man asks if the boss is there with him. Extending his hands, he seems to beckon someone closer with a simple gesture. At this, he warns that he doesn't like being called boss, making it very clear. Talking about the place, one man says that criminal groups always pop up there again, so he proposes to control these groups, managing their activities to keep everything in order. Worried about conflict, the man asks if he would be the first to run into trouble there. Discovering the situation, they mention that the previous boss asked them to watch the mansion. Smirking, the new boss thinks that Nears wasn't just some random fool then. Thoughtfully, he recalls that the old boss always prepared a special kind of tribute. Startled by the news, he asks what kind of tribute it was. wanting to understand more. Answering the question, he explains it was an annual tribute for the region's knights. He then reveals that the knights provided support, explaining why they were in that location. A few days later, the man walks through a large hall, thinking about his next steps. Holding a flame, he prepares to make a move. Leaping high, he launches a powerful fire attack. He then reveals that the fire is just a distraction. Meanwhile, an ice crystal appears, following the attack. The fire and ice attacks head straight for the mirror. Clenching his fist, he watches the attacks fly in the right direction. Hitting its mark, the mirror shatters in a flash of blue light. Then he realizes his mana circuits have increased to 5. Now, he needs to train, because he was lucky in his fight with Niers. Looking back, he remembers that Niers let his guard down easily. Firmly, he states that he was the one who took the enemy's life. Lying down, he recalls Jonas telling him about the enemies of House Gerda. Observing, he thinks that the enemies were strong against mages, so he knows that luck won't smile on him again. In the end, he needs to get stronger to protect Goethe, no matter the cost. Surprised, he hears a voice calling him young master. Asking what's wrong, he sees the people who have entered his room. Going to get the clothes, Hans follows the older woman's order. Sitting up, the young man questions the reason for all the commotion. In response, the woman announces with a smile that the master has returned. With a cloth on his face, he listens to the news. Looking surprised, near his neck, the medallion he wears gleams faintly. Riding a horse, a man returns to the castle after a long time. Thinking, the young man wonders if his father is really there.